Keys to the Commonwealth, a podcast where we share the real stories of local community members who are using real estate to build personal wealth, along with tips and tricks from professionals across the industry. And now, your host, Landry Fields.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. I'm your host, Landry Fields. Today's episode is brought to you by Nova Insurance. We can help you out with all your real estate investing needs, business needs, and home and auto insurance related needs. As advisors and brokers, we kind of find the best options that we can for you and your unique circumstances and so forth. So my guest today, I'm very excited to have, as I think it's a topic that's very important, especially for the next generation. I guess that would be a Gen Zs, especially in that respect, as far as it's becoming harder and harder, I think, in some respects, with real estate, to get into real estate, to even own a home across America, et cetera. It seems like that it's kind of, the needle's flipping back the other direction a little bit as far as home ownership and the struggles to get into home ownership. And that's obviously been accentuated for sure during COVID, and how I think the numbers are close to like 1 in 4 houses right now are being purchased by real estate investors or something along those lines. And so my guest today is born and raised right here in Lexington, and he has been involved with house hacking, which is the topic today that we're going to be talking about, what that is, how you can do that, and especially if you know anybody that's younger, Gen Z, even after that. I mean, I think it's a great topic and a podcast to send to them to kind of realize and maybe open their eyes to some ways that they can really set themselves up for success in the long-term future. So without further ado, I want to welcome Matthew Underwood to the Keys to the Commonwealth studio. Matthew, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah. What's the official? Do you have an official title for your business in that sense?
We actually don't have an LLC. I just kept my 2 properties just under my name right now.
Yeah.
I've heard probably don't do the LLC till you get the 3rd, maybe. How the best to do it.
So different ways of doing it for sure. So, obviously, you're, I would say, more Gen Z. I'm a millennial in that sense, I guess. Kind of squeak into the millennial spot there. But I've been watching you. Obviously, we've known each other for, in passing for many years and stuff like that, with same similar circles with either church or schooling or other stuff like that. You knew some of my siblings, but I want to have you on just talk about your story. I mean, I think it's such a cool story. I mean, I don't think you're like, hey, I'm a full-time real estate investor, kind of expert person type of thing. But I think what you're doing again is so valuable, especially for kind of younger generation, or even my generation, if they're having trouble or with getting into real estate, or it's just hard right now.
It's so difficult, especially with the interest rates going up. I think I just saw that they're probably going to raise another hike rate soon. And just the quote-unquote term house hacking is what I've kind of used to grow my wealth recently in the past, 7 years. Okay,
so 7 years you've been doing it is when you bought your first one?
I bought my first home, actually, I remember it was February of 2016. Yep. Okay. And it was a great deal. I remember looking for it forever. I was kind of in the market to find a home. I was living with my parents still at the time, and I was like, well, I'm not going to college. I knew I wanted to grow my wealth. And just based on some podcasts, some reading, I realized, owning a home's great rather than paying rent. So I really didn't want to move out and start paying rent. So I was just able to look for 6 months on the market, and I was able to find a home and purchase it. And then within, I think we did some renovations to that home. We flipped the bathroom to make it it was a 1.5 bath. Okay. And then we flipped it to 2. So that way the master bedroom, because I knew I was going to have roommates, I wanted the master bedroom to make sure it was a full bathroom. Okay. Not just, so that way I could have my own space and still have roommates. Sure. And so after that flip, moved in, and the night I moved in, I had a roommate instantly living with me paying rent, and it was awesome. It was great. It was a guy from church, and he actually kept texting me. He's like, when are we moving in? When are we moving in? I was like, I got to get this contract guy going, So
you get the luxury a little bit of not needing to live in it right away, right? Absolutely. So you kind of able to do some portion. Did you do all of it that first time right away?
Most of everything. The house was it was actually Fannie Mae. So when I bought it, you had to be a first-time homeowner. So that was a great leg up.
What % down was that?
I think 3? I did. You could do 3, but I think I went 10. Okay. Just on my first one, 10. And on my second one, I did go 3.
3.5.
Yeah, I did 3.5 on my new one, and we can get into that one as well. And So I did the renovations. That took about 40 days and moved in. And I just remember the first night, this is a random side story. The first night, of course, I bought this house. I'm like, kind of like, okay, I did this. I'm falling asleep. And these two cats outside were attacking each other. And I swore it was like a demon or something in this house. I'm like, I bought a haunted house. This is terrible. Even my roommate ran out and we're like, what is this? And it was a crazy night. So
back to, the origin of this all. What was it that kind of got you thinking this path kind of, because it's, it's something that like obviously schooling, other stuff like that, they don't really teach this stuff. And it's such a huge opportunity, huge way of growing your net worth, of like learning the value of money as far as letting money kind of work for you type of things. What kind of got you into that thinking or down that path?
I've always had kind of the more entrepreneurial ideas of how to make, passive income or, how to grow your wealth, the difference between, cash flow and, what's the equity of the home. Yeah. And that just kind of fascinated me. I know the Bigger podcast was kind of popping off at the time. I read a Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, some basic, entrepreneurial kind of things. And I was like, okay, well, I know I need a house. Like I want to live in a house one day. That seems to be the American dream. So I'm going to start that early. And I was like, well, I love my roommates. I love hanging out with people. So I love my friends. So I'm going to get a roommate. And I didn't really realize at the time it was called the Househacking when I was doing it.
It just made sense.
It just made sense to me. So it's been a blessing though, a huge blessing.
Yeah. So you got in first house, did most of the renovation up front type of thing in that sense. But of course, with that being Freddie Mae, right?
Yeah, it was,
the rules are you got to live in it 2 years, right?
Yep, so you have to live in it 2 years. And when you go to...
why do you not... Explain why you have to live it in 2 years. So if you don't live in 2 years, what happens?
I actually don't know the consequences.
I think it's short-term capital. Long-term short-term capital gains. Exactly. And so you pay a lot more on the improved value of that home.
Yes.
If you on a short-term capital gains basis, if you live in it less than 2 years.
Exactly. And that's why you want to keep it for 2 years, and then you can actually apply for another loan and get another house and do the same thing, which we can get into the second one.
Yeah.
But I remember with that first house, when I bought it, always make sure you have some reserves, because during the renovations, my contractor called me and said, hey, it's getting really cold in here because it's the middle of February and he's doing these contractors. I was like, what's going on? I go over there and the furnace is blown. So I spend, I think, about $5,000 within the first month after already paying, the down payment to brand new furnace. And so just make sure having those cash reserves is a big thing going into a home, I think.
Yeah. And so was it an abandoned home?
It was, I think it was like 6 months. It was not lived for. So.
And one of ours was that way, where it hadn't been lived in for a while. And it's just, it's crazy how short amount of time that a home not being lived in can quickly, just things can go wrong and south and deteriorate or something like that. So
exactly.
If it's not been lived in for a while, just almost try to look for finding what's gone wrong in that time frame, because something more likely probably has.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but yeah, you were able to use that equity from the first home in some of that respect?
And actually, I actually decided not to tap into it, because when I found my next home, which was in 2020, during the pandemic, I found this home off market, and talking to the homeowner, we were making a deal happen. I decided to go, do another live-in, move in, live in it, and do another FHA loan. Yeah. And that was 3.5% down, which I was like, this is amazing. 3.5% down. I'm going to live in this place and renovate it. And at that time, interest rates are so low, which, it's like, it was like 2.99 on both houses now.
That's crazy.
When it's crazy, it's like 6 today. It's at least. But I decided not to tap into it, because I think at that time I was like, I don't need the equity in the loan. I already had reserves saved from, just saving money, trying to live, frugal.
Because you have obviously this is not your full-time gig. This is a scenario to build have passive wealth and so forth.
Well, I remember the first house, when I had 2 roommates, they would cover the mortgage plus. So that was like the nice thing, that I was living in the house just rent-free and just maintaining it, and it was awesome. Now, I think it ended up being, I had to pay some, the utilities on it, but beyond that, I was just like, I'm still building equity in this home. I'm paying down the mortgage. It's just a win-win. And then the roommates, I was not charging them an arm and a leg to live in Lexington in a great home.
Everybody's getting a great deal out of the situation.
And we all like each other. It was like, make sure you get roommates you like each other. You know, so you can live together. So,
I mean, that's awesome. And so you had like a 3-bed, 2-bath kind of scenario. Yeah. So they were sharing, they're sharing a bath. You got your own master bath. So as long as you like the people, since you're rubbing shoulders, that makes it better for sure. But I mean, that's an awesome aspect, right? Like, 2 roommates, they're now paying the mortgage. Therefore, everything that's coming in, you're able to start stockpiling, obviously working a job at the same time in that sense on top of that. So I mean, you were such a leg up real quick in that sense. So you got the second one. I mean, how was that transition? It was follow. Is the first one become like a full-time rental type of thing?
Exactly. So I was able to talk to one of my roommates. I gave him a discount. It's like, hey, if we move, I'll give you a discount for like the first 6 months. So I gave him an incentive to come with me. And so he did, which was great. And he's one of my best friends now. Yeah. Shout out to Thomas. And he moved in with me, and then I started renting out the other home. And then the nice thing is that once you start making that first home a rental property, the banks see it as rental now. Yeah. It's a full-time rental, and just different, levers you can pull in the loans. And, if I'm looking for my third one, probably in the next 6 months, and instead of it being my home equity line, it's just an investment property. So they see pure cash flow. It's cash flowing. Okay, we can just take this loan out. Here you go. It's so much easier.
So you're looking for it as just pure investment property, or you're going to be living in it, doing,
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things that when it comes to like your tool bag, what can you do? Sure. And I think both are an option for me now, which has been great. I still have the same roommates. I actually have 2 now in my current house, and I'm like, if it's an investment property, I can just, make a down payment and then start renting that out. If in the next 6 months a roommate wants to leave, and it's like, hey, it's just one of us, let's move in. It's the more options you have, it's just so much nicer to be able to choose things,
flexibility and stuff like that. And then, as far as finding the properties, what has been your you said it's a couple, or both of the first 2 off market?
The first one was, the first one is diligent searching Zillow every single day and being on that. And I remember I set up so many email notifications. I had the app at the time, and I was just popping. I got a lot
really easier in 2016.
Nobody was using Zillow back then, I feel like. And I just remember I was quick. When I put my offer in on that first home, I think it was just 2 of us.
Using a realtor?
Yeah, using a realtor. Actually, so through his Fannie Mae had a realtor, and I just used him as my realtor. I was like, hey, I just want this. So he actually got the 6% full commission by using me. And which there's only 2 bids on the house, because during that Fannie Mae process, the first 90, it was either 90 or 30 days, 30 or 90 days, I can't remember. You had to be a first-time homeowner to purchase it. And so it was me and another couple, I remember, and we just bid the same. But I guess because I used him as my realtor, I think he might have picked me. So he got 6%. So, but yeah, I remember getting that house in, and then the second one was actually so I own a lawn care company, Wildcat Mowing, and I was mowing this neighbor's lawn, and this guy came out and was like, "Hey, mow my lawn this one time. I'm having." So I was like, "Sure," and he did. And as I got to talking to him, I was listening to a real estate podcast. I was like already listening, and he mentioned, I can't remember the exact same phrase, but he mentioned like, "Yeah, this old house of mine, I'm just getting kind of tired of it." And that just sent me in the okay, what do you mean by that? So we had a 20-minute conversation that ultimately led up to me purchasing his house off market and just from seller. So no realtors and everything like that. Saved him 6%. So he gave me a discount on the property value itself as well. Right. So it was just being a little bit aware of conversations and what you want, and making sure it was a win-win for both of us.
Right. And, that's true. If you're out mowing lawns and like that a lot, it's you get to look at a lot of properties and houses in a lot more detail than just driving past them real quick.
Exactly.
So that's kind of a nice. So the next one, obviously, you're on the hunt for your third one, and where's it kind of go from there? You think you're going to continue just more of a slow and steady pace, but maybe not necessarily. See where it goes, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where it's like...
it might be the podcast keeps going, and 5 years from now, we're like, we can't even get you on the podcast.
Yeah, God's plan, of course, but I would love to just provide such, I think I'm a good landlord to my roommates, but also the tenants that are currently at my old property.
Yeah.
I just think there's so many horror stories of bad landlords in all of Kentucky, but also just all the states. So, and just making sure that it's a win for what my goals are in life. I think that's what you have to maintain is, hey, does this help your long-term goals? I think that's what you have to really have focused on in real estate is, once you start getting into it, you're going to start seeing this deal pop up, this post, or this guy telling you about this deal. And it's like, okay, you're going to get flooded sometimes with opportunities. So having the ability to know what your goals are and how those opportunities line up to make it a win. Now, a nice thing in real estate is that if you're going down a path and you don't like it, hopefully you have the option to sell and get out. I think that's just a really nice, ability.
Exactly. And then I know some of the other things we were talking about and thinking through is that you can't do it necessarily everywhere. Is that right as well? There are some deed restriction aspects to it. So it's not like you can just go do this at any property. Yeah,
there was before I bought my first house, I was, of course, searching. And I remember finding a home that was great value, I think in a good neighborhood. And I found out that deed restrictions did not let you, it was a certain percentage, what you could earn on capital gains within a time period.
Okay.
And this was not even FHA loan. This was like a government area housing and, but really nice housing. And also with that, it had to be owner occupied.
Right.
And then even with the owner occupied, it was iffy if you could have roommates rent from you. So I was like, okay, I really don't want to get into this, I could have made the deal work. I probably could have lived in it, but I really wanted the roommate aspect of, so and then I think 3 months later I found the first house too. So it goes back to
cautious to doing your research. And like you said, you had been studying it enough to kind of, one, know markets, know areas, know prices. Two, realize, honestly, I feel like a lot of people may have missed that trying to jump in the deed restriction side.
Yeah.
And then as far as, taxes in that respect, basically they just pay you as and you just have to report that on your taxes, right?
Taxes. And then, you could also take up to, I think, like 30% off of, utilities and all those things as well, which is just great.
Yeah.
And, it just makes, and if you do go at a loss with your roommates, you can actually use that as a tax advantage on your W-2 form as well to balance the taxes that those pay off.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not a CPA or anything like that. So do your own research.
To piggyback on to your experience with true house hacking in that respect, we've also talked a little bit about the ADU side of things, which has changed in Fayette County as of recently in that respect, allowing either secondary structures on certain areas or, a true, I made the basement its own living in separate entrance type of living, assuming you live as the property owner on the property itself. So thankfully, Fayette County is slowly starting to kind of adapt a little bit in some of those restrictions that had been on, made it a little bit harder. So there's some more flexibility now, which has been since you first started, which is nice in that respect. So.
Yeah, and then actually the current house I have has a basement with an entry door.
Yeah.
And I thought about doing the same thing about, hey, just renting out the basement and doing all that things. But then you started getting to, you have to make sure the exits and windows are big enough and easy. And it just, again, it gets into those too much for me sometimes. So.
That's right. Well, that's awesome. Any other interesting hobbies and things you like to do? No?
So I do photography on the side, do some weddings.
Yeah.
I random DJing here and there. I'm kind of a personal guy, so I can, work a crowd and, take some nice photos, I feel like. So those are fun to do. And, of course, I do full-time, mowing, lawn care, whatnot. I have my business there. And, it's kind of fun to do some side hustles. I think the side hustle business is you just don't know what takes off.
And I've felt like I've done so many side hustles over the years but I've been able to always take bits and pieces of what I've learned or a new skill set out of that to adapt it into something else too. So
so speaking of side hustles, the ability to just be a little handy too in your own house is great.
So I guess speak to that. Were you very handy prior, or did you kind of? How much of the work have you done on both houses yourself?
So in the first house, I was younger. I just really didn't know too much, and it was going to be a full knock out a wall.
By the way, how old were you when you bought the first one?
Oh, that's a good question. You put me on the spot. I got to do basic math now. 2016, I'm 29 now. What is that, 6 years ago? 23 then? I was 23. Yeah, I was 23. Yeah.
Instead of everybody's going one direction, you're like, I'm going to go this direction and start buying real estate.
Yeah, and as a side note, one of the reasons I was able to actually buy a home is like, I remember I didn't take a vacation for like 3 years.
Yeah.
I just remember just staycations or, gorges really next to Lexington or just, some of those. I didn't eat out too much at that time, so it's just, I knew for a fact I wanted to sacrifice now for the benefits later, and it's been tremendous benefits with the values of the Lexington values of the homes going up.
That's such a hard concept, I think, especially. I know it's a hard concept. Maybe me or my generation, but I'm sure like Gen Z, I'm sure like the generation after that's even harder. Just the value of sacrificing your either money or time, et cetera, in order for seeing the long and big picture.
Yeah, it's so worth it though. If I can give anybody encouragement, the dollar saved can compound so quickly if you put it in the right assets.
Yeah. So how much of your work then did you kind of do or start?
So the next house on this house, I've done so much more.
Yeah.
So something that you can actually do since you're an owner occupant, unlike an investment property, is that you can do your own electrical and plumbing just by pulling permits. So something you can't do if you're an investment property, you cannot legally. You and I can't go in there unless we're certified electricians and plumbers to go do those things. We have to hire those out.
Right.
But if you're owner occupied, you can do it yourself by pulling the permits and then just getting it
we're not
checked
talking about
out.
Like changing lights out or changing a. We're talking about
fixture.
Actual
we're talking about
running or
wire and full plumbing. Yeah, in this new house, I ran brand new wiring all to a new bathroom. It was on multiple breakers. And I was just like, this is not good. And I ran its own breaker and new plumbing and all that in. And as long as you go through the correct channels, it's safe. Right. And it was awesome. I mean, I saved a lot of money doing that myself too. And it was fun, you know, just learning how to wire, just make sure you know what you're doing.
And the nice thing is too, now that you know, even if you don't do it, like you're not, electrician or plumber or somebody sitting there, HVAC, you don't have this like, well, I just don't know, just fix it or whatever and get taken advantage. Not that we would, but you just know more about what you're talking about.
Exactly.
You know more about what the situation is and you can go from there and not have, just the...
Yeah. I mean, I think you talked about how you laid some floors at one of your investment properties. So that's always good to do at your own home, but also investments. So kind of realizing what you can and can't do is just, again, knowledge is just key to success, I feel like.
I also had to lay flooring in my own home this past weekend, and I felt like I did 3 leg days in the span of 8 hours.
Yeah, so. How's that lower back feeling,
The back was, I thought the back would be, I was feeling pain on my back. I thought the back would be dead the next day, and then I woke up and it was my legs were just like...
Those plank boards get heavy, so...
The boards weren't. I was just crawling around like that, It's like, especially I was pretty much doing it myself. My business partner came over. Thank the Lord, he came over and helped me finish the last half of it. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm like, I really am done playing flooring. But again, learning I talked about my other podcast, and I'm sure you would attest to. I would not trade the sacrifice of like getting my hands in there, figuring things out, with either my own home or some of these first rental properties. At all. I mean, the amount of knowledge and expertise and things we were able to learn.
Exactly.
And then just the first one alone was just so invaluable.
Yeah. One of the biggest keys to if you're trying to do, the house hacking or flipping or, really is understanding the value of a home and understanding how much renovations are going to cost. I feel like that's always the key is understanding how many renovations. And I just remember I finished up one of my flooring this past weekend on my basement, and you buy these boxes, and I remember being like, I had exactly like a box left. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. If I had this whole, I can't remember how many square feet it was, but it was like one box. That's pretty good.
Right.
Okay, that's $30 that box. Okay, it's not like I have 20 extra boxes, or if not like I didn't buy enough boxes.
Sure.
So it's like understanding when you walk through a value of a house, what's the renovations going to cost. I think that's
we did one duplex and we learned a lot with that one.
Yep.
And the second duplex second single family dwelling we're working on now, getting ready to finish up. Actually, this week, I think it's been the nice pairing. I feel like, one, you learn a lot. 2, you kind of figure out the other things that maybe weren't on the first one. And so I think combined on those two, for the most part, we've really come to understand a lot of different. As far again, like you said, the budget, what things cost, what things are fine, what things need to be addressed and taken care of.
And then I feel like timing as well, because especially in an investment property, if you don't have cash flow, so it's like these renovations keep going, postpone. Okay, well, now we're having to pay the mortgage and we're losing rent. So it's like, even if you do hire construction workers, future, contractors, you'd be like, no, I know this only takes a day job. I know this takes a day. I can do it myself in a day. You guys should be able to do this in a day. Come on. So
that's right. And then I don't know if you do this, maybe you do it, but I mean, you definitely, even if you're having renters in your home, it's always a great idea to have them, for the extra $7 to $9 it costs for them to have a renter's policy. It goes so much to CY. What's the acronym there? CYOA. Cover your own.
Oh yeah.
Cover your own butt there.
Yep. Exactly.
In that sense that, like, I mean, if something did happen, or God forbid that, like, you don't want it to ruin a relationship, you don't want it to be where they're suing you or somebody's suing you because they lost all of their possessions, where a simple renter's policy would cover if for some reason they caused the house to burn down, or they lost all their things in just a random house fire or something like that. So
exactly.
I would definitely recommend anybody that is thinking about doing that too. It's just the easiest way to cover your own butt as far as that goes, from kind of a loss that could really do damage in that, or do a big setback in that sense. Yeah,
definitely. I all my roommates that lived with me we did leases as well. So, it's just one room. We're just doing leases. And on those leases, I'm like, hey, get some private, renter's insurance. It's cheap. I really recommend it. It just provides so much security for everybody. And it just makes it a peaceful, and having insurance is great when you need it. So.
And that's a good point too, as far as the leases. I mean, having it, that's, you were like, hey, you were treating it, okay, yes, we're buddies.
Yeah.
But and that's this, you want it to be like, oh, we're best friends. We'll never ever, not like each other or be enemies type of thing. But I mean, again, you just never know. And so I think that's why he's like always just doing something like, hey, all right, here's the lease. We know it's on paper. Handshakes are great to an extent, but you just can't rely on it. And having things spelled out,
it's so nice.
It's such a better way.
Well, and then, as a side note too, the reason I did at the beginning was that way I'd be ready for when I really actually have to do if you want to use the term more real lease, when it is an investment property, how to do this, what's correct, and how to go about that. And just, clarity will produce, friendship forever. I think that's just where it's just like, hey, this lease says this says this, we're just clear. I also had the roommates that lived with me, I always suggest a code of conduct. I was like, hey, the code of conduct is this, because so many kids nowadays are, hey, 5 buddies get together, or, how many of our buddies, they rent a house together, and then everybody's leasers. Sure. And you're house hacking, if you're renting to friends, it's not co-leasing. No. You're renting from me. This is kind of my domain, and your friends, yes, but you're going to live kind of my tendencies a little bit more than, your style.
So. And it makes the conversation even easier as far as you having the stability to know, like, okay, we're on a probably 12-month lease or something like that. Exactly. So you're not having to worry about somebody just walking out, that income going away or something like that. I mean, there's, it's built into the framework exactly as a true business type of thing. So you just have the benefit of them also being close friends at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. That's the best way to do it.
Any favorite restaurants locally here?
I love Drake's. Drake's is a great one. I think you can't go wrong there.
It's not really as local though now. I don't know. It's kind of starting to expand.
I know.
It is. I saw one in Chattanooga just a couple months back. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like their thing that's kind of growing out,
pushing out. Yeah. So.
What about Kentucky? Being born? For me, it took traveling more to appreciate what we had here. So but what's kind of your favorite things?
Lexington. I just like I think it's a big enough city for me, but it's with small town people. I just love the people here. I think,
biggest small town in America, I say.
Yeah.
If you don't know them, someone you know does.
Oh, I feel like I don't know who's moved here and been like, I hate Kentucky. I don't know anybody.
That's actually a great point.
They're like, yeah, it's great. It's just, I want to go to the beach. I'm like, okay, we don't have a beach anywhere close, but fine. But we have the lakes. We have, the Red River Gorge.
It's not the desert. It's not the beach, but we have all kinds of, it's not the Rocky Mountains type of thing, but, it's like everything else in between.
Yeah. You got the local sports, you got the rivalry of Louisville and Kentucky. Yeah. It's fun. You got Cincinnati right up the street if you really want to go to a bigger city. And
Nashville down south.
Exactly. It's
popping. True. Within an hour to 3 hours. You can be in a
Gatlinburg, Tennessee is right there. I mean, you are pretty centralized, and you still have the downtown now. Is a lot of fun.
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
So nice. So I think the soccer team's coming in now, and
so not downtown.
Not downtown anymore. Okay.
No, they're building. We just did a shout out to a previous episode with Bogus. We were talking about that. They're doing a new development downtown in that spot right there, like a big grocery store. Housing, which I mean, Lexington needed that more.
Oh yeah.
I think the soccer is going to be going out more towards the interstate, actually.
That for travel and for tourists and coming in. No, that makes sense. But there's so much going on that you can't.
You thought about doing Airbnb at all, or?
I thought about it, especially if I could get the basement to especially with I've heard the traveling nurses they just make so much cash with that.
Especially if you're in hospital. So
exactly.
That's probably got to cross your mind.
Yeah. No, definitely. I also, when we have Keeneland, of course, that's a big thing. And I know if you're in Louisville, I've heard a lot of people in Louisville will rent out their whole house during the Derby week. And it's just crazy. So it's just there's so many options.
I had a buddy living here in Lexington and rented out his pretty large house last minute, just let's see if, I think one of the horse owners from that was racing at the Derby, there was no place they could find, and so they rented out his house in Lexington, and they were in the Derby in Louisville type of thing. So
that's awesome.
I wouldn't have thought, but it's pretty cool. It's been pretty cool to see Lexington how it's changing, and Central Kentucky how it's changing a lot.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of the parts of Kentucky are going to continue at post-COVID with that, especially. I'm interested in E-Town, and especially I think E-Town's going to.
I think there's so many cities. I think Danville can be. There's just a lot. I think they're just only going to expand. If you look at Georgetown's market, I mean Georgetown. I mean they do have the car factories up there, but they're exploding and everything's just popping. So Lexington's a great place. I think we're ranked, one of the top 10 best cities with people or small town businesses. I mean I always see shop local around here, which I love. Right. So.
Well, man, if anybody wants to kind of reach out to you, get in touch with you, how can they do so to kind of talk about it, or they don't have to? You don't have to at all either.
Yeah, I mean, the two companies I have is Wildcat Mowing, so wildcatmowing.com if you need any of that needs. Yeah. There's a few. I do some rental properties, mowings for them, so I just take care of it all for them. I do photography, so Matthew L. Underwood at gmail.com is my that's my email, and the website's the same thing. So either way, or Facebook, Instagram, I guess. I don't know those things. And just follow me. I'm always down for a conversation or some tips. So especially for the younger generation, I'm a big advocate of get into, just learn, so that way you know what to do in the future. Right. So.
Well, everybody, we will check you back next week for another episode of the Keys to Commonwealth podcast. Make sure you subscribe. And again, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show, Matthew.
Thanks, Landry.
To learn more about this podcast, visit our page at keystothecommonwealth.com. To connect with Landry regarding insuring your investment portfolio, email Landry at novainsuranceGroup.com or call 859-687-2004.